were just getting ready to discuss the individuals that you guys received information on pertaining to the discussion on role clarification as well as procedures. And we were opening it up to you guys to have a discussion on who you felt would be your choice. So that's where we're at to get you up to speed. So if any council member wants to start, this is your guys' show. Councilmember Kamiskas.
Yeah, I had a chance to read through both of them. Obviously, I'm more familiar with Ann. Both have impressive resumes. My concern with Ann would be, having gone through actually both of the sessions that she kind of described, A, the Jurassic Parliament, and B, you know, some of the procedures and things. I think going too deep into the Jurassic Parliament part of it to go through Robert's rules and stuff may be a little bit too much. So I think if we would go with her, we need to maybe have her customize it a little bit more, maybe with some suggestions of, you know, from the council, specific questions that we would want to have her review as part of her discussion. That was, and not having sat through the other gals' presentations, like I can't comment on that. But that was just my one comment on Ann, because I don't think she necessarily needs to 100% go through both of those presentations. I've been through both of them, one of them a couple times.
Okay. Looking for input. Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy.
Anybody jump in, right? Yeah,
Please.
anybody can jump in, correct? Katie, I'm pleased that you use the word procedure along with role clarity, because looking at this, I was somewhat a little confused on what we were after, because what I recall, and I wrote down the notes from our previous meeting, is the title was role clarity, because I know Chris brought it up and also Odin brought it up, as that roles and responsibility is something that we wanted to discuss. And I'm very familiar with both these individuals, especially McAloon. And yet when I look at their resumes, the big thing is Jurassic Parliament. So I would be concerned that if we're going to get into workshops on how to run a meeting versus really what is our responsibility, what is our roles, what do we want to get accomplished there?
Yeah, and I think you guys really have the ability to set that stage of what you want the discussion to be, so we can direct them.
If I could offer some information, having had back and forth with both of them, I think Ann does a very good job and has a template where she has a lot of training tools and can go and customize. I think that's what Councilmember Kamiskas thought is, can you customize for exactly what we need? And she's done this for so long, I would just expect that she could. Laura is an attorney, and she's actually the attorney for the city of Pullman. Again, very knowledgeable, very experienced, and willing to customize and you know, take the hour. They both thought that it'd be 2 one-hour sessions that we could do, but both of them were willing to customize your needs with their presentation.
Councilmember Dunn.
So I'd voice as Councilmember Kamiskas that I've also observed McFarland's presentation, AWC and other, and you know, I'm familiar with what's presented as content. It is important that she would customize that to be suitable to the audience or driving towards the directive. I've got confidence in it. Based on what I know, I'd lean towards suggesting McFarland as a provider of this service.
Okay. Councilmember Foyer, Kurtz, Langford, or Sievers? Thoughts?
I'll just echo what's already been said. McFarland sounds good. Just need to customize it towards roles and responsibilities.
Okay, Councilmember Kurtz, I saw your hand go up.
I'm fine with either one of them. I don't know the difference between them other than what I read, and it sounds like they come with great experience, so I'm fine with either one.
Okay. Councilmember Foyer?
Where are their rates the same?
No, they would not be the same if we were having in-person meetings, because one is on the west side of the state and one is local to the Spokane area. But under the circumstances, and when I went back and looked at my notes, it looks like if we want this immediately, it's going to be by Zoom anyway. So the rates, one does it by the session, the other does it by the hour. When I did the arithmetic, Councilmember Foyer, they're real close because of the preparation that one would need and the hourly rate. So the rates are very close. But if they were traveling, there'd be a travel expense, which does not seem to be a factor this time.
Thank you.
Councilmember, or Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess one of the questions would be is that how much time do we see? Is this an hour? Is this a 2 hour? Is this stretched out over a couple of meetings? Because I think that will certainly have a lot to do with what the comments are going to be.
Well, I think based on both their feedback for what they feel would be sufficient, it would be an hour per topic.
2 1-hour sessions.
Councilmember Kamiskas?
Yeah, I think we had talked about during one of our meetings about splitting it into two, having kind of the presentation for maybe the first half hour with some question and answer afterwards, or obviously it could be mixed in, but that's what I recall talking about, no matter who does the presentation.
Make sure I understand. What you're looking for is maybe a half-hour presentation and then a half hour of conversation around the presentation.
Yeah, or depends on depending on who we go with. I don't know the level of engagement the other gal has, but I know Ann McFarland keeps everybody quite involved the whole time that she's doing hers. So it could be that it's just an hour mixed with everything mixed in per topic.
Yeah, I think to have a good dialogue with some effective Q&A,
Yeah.
you'd want that.
Yeah, Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Langford.
Yeah, I'm good with either one of them. I was with Phil there. If one of them was going to be cheaper because they lived in this area, that would have been a tipping scale. But otherwise, whichever one is great.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy, you saw your hand up?
Yeah, Laura, with the STA, I've sat through a couple of hers when she did something for the STA, and I thought it was fine. So really, either one I think would be fine for us, because I think we're going to be setting the criteria of what we are looking for. So I think either one would be great.
Councilmember Foyer?
Are they both available in the next 30 to 60 days?
I will follow up. I did let them know that we were hoping to get this wrapped up in September, October, so there was a willingness to do that. But I will confirm.
Well, on that note, then I'd support Chris and Dan and go along with Ann.
Okay, so I will, if it's all right, Mayor, I'll follow up with Ann tomorrow, and when I went back and looked at my notes, because I want to make sure I remembered everyone's feedback from last council meeting, it sounds like you're ready to move forward with this, and if you are, then I could shoot for October 3rd or some Tuesday in the future. I didn't know if you wanted to piggyback it on as a workshop before the regular council meeting, or if you want to have a separate Tuesday evening workshop on a specific topic. That's what I wasn't sure about.
Any thoughts? Councilmember Kurtz?
Might be nice to have it on a different day just in case it runs over. We are not boxed into having to have our council meeting.
It's a good idea. I'll go with that.
So I will throw out Tuesdays in September, October to see the availability, and probably send you all an email and see which dates work best for you.
On the offset days of our council meetings, is 6 o'clock good for everybody? for a start time?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, got that squared away.
Yes.
Next up,
So the next is our strategic plan, and I think Lisa's gonna walk us through that.
Good evening, council members and mayor.
Lisa, can you turn your mic on and bring it to you?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good evening, mayor and council members. I'm going to quickly walk you through the strategic plan, kind of the process that we went through in 2018. This was, now the council and the mayor were working together on this strategic plan for about a year before I came on board. And so much of the heavy lifting was done, and it was really a matter of organizing the strategic plan. And there was a focus on the community's vision, mission, and values. And then we drilled down into the four pillars being the vibrant economy and business environment, safe, active, and engaged community, sustainable resources, and quality infrastructure. And we have goals associated with each of these. I'm sure you've all had a chance to look at this. It's not exactly heavy reading. Next slide, please. And again, for each of these four pillars, we identified strategies and tasks. Vibrant economy focused on business recruitment and expansion, advertising and promotion is a great place to do business, and simplifying development regulations and streamlining permitting processes, which I can attest to the fact that we've been working on for the last 2 years. Next slide, please. Under safe, active, and engaged community, our strategies focus on providing clean, safe, and secure parks and open space, utilizing park facilities to maximize public use and sense of community, communicating, connecting, and engaging with the public, maintaining and expanding our extensive trail systems to provide connectivity and promote active lifestyle, and enriching and enhancing the intellectual, cultural, and creative opportunities through the Big Lake Library Services. Next slide. Sustainable resources was the third pillar, and it focused on implementing and refining an asset management plan and implementing asset management funding strategies, developing the financial management plan, and investing in employees. Next slide. The last one focused on quality, facilities, and infrastructures. And our strategy was simple, to develop a capital facilities improvement plan. And it's not, we didn't have a capital improvement plan in prior years, but it was transportation heavy, and it wasn't necessarily focusing on all of the things that the city council was interested in engaging in. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we did as part of the process was there were a number of different projects, capital projects, that had been identified through the course of the year and a half that council worked on this. And it's pretty challenging sometimes to look at a list of 20 some odd things and decide what the prioritization was. So council and the mayor went through a process whereby they did a prioritization matrix, where effectively you're simplifying the equation by comparing one element to the other to identify which is more important to you. And as you go through the process, you're systematically comparing each of these projects to another project to determine how important these projects are. Next slide, please. And so we went through a process whereby we looked at parks and public facilities. Next slide, please. Transportation matrix. Next slide, please. And trails and pedestrian pathways. And council had decided that it was easier to look at these within the separate categories, in part because it's really hard to compare a transportation project to, say, a park project. apples and oranges. Although, flip side of it is, and I'll just share this with you as we get into implementing a capital facilities plan. The flip side of it is the same people that are working on it, so it'd be helpful. It is helpful to kind of understand the priorities, all together. But again, that's a matter for council. So that's the process that the council went through in 2018, and it kind of laid a foundation for the development of what our capital facilities plan looks like today, which includes both capital projects and asset management projects. And we'll get into that in a bit, but next slide, please. I really just wanted to talk, kind of tee up the conversation as to what the process was and how we got there and how we use this document. And this is really, at this point, turning it over to council, it's really a council discussion. We can talk, hopefully we'll hear from you if you want to engage in this process again and what the process might look like. We're certainly willing and able to support council in going through a process.
Lisa, I'm going to ask you a question. So this document is approximately 2 years old.
Yes.
Yeah, so we really want to know from council, do you want to edit it? Do you want to update it? Or do you want to just discuss it and become familiar with it again? That's really what we're looking for tonight.
Councilmember Kamiskas.
One of the things that we kind of missed with this document, and I think this might be a good time to tweak it with regards to, we have strategies, we have tasks, and throughout the year we have projects that we're working on, and yeah, we say, yep, that's listed in the strategic plan, but we're not looking at it the other way. We're not looking at this list and kind of, what I would like to see, I guess, is for us to keep track and revisit this briefly, maybe every quarter. So for each list of tasks, what have we done this quarter toward these tasks? Because that's one thing we haven't, usually when you've got a strategic plan, we have much more measurable things. And great, yeah, we've got a great financial dashboard, but we don't really have any measurable outcomes listed for our strategies. Capital facilities plan, obviously that's very measurable and tangible, but so I guess from my view of things, a great way to update this would be to have that quick quarterly report tracking what we've done towards these tasks and what the outcomes have been.
I think that's excellent, because I think if, in a very generic way, we use this as kind of our guiding principles in some ways, but we have to be more intentional and more accountable. And I like the idea of doing a quarterly update and us providing you that information about the activities and the involvement and the resources that we've dedicated to that strategy or task.
Yeah. And what that would leave us with is a good way to report back to our citizens at the end of the year, or we can do it quarterly as well. But hey, in 2020, these are the things that we did toward our strategies, and here are the results. We'd have a good report card that would be easy to track for our citizens to take a look at each year.
I think I had seen somebody else's hand up. Councilmember Kurtz.
I had my hand up, but I was going to say pretty much the same thing that Chris did, that one of my questions was, how are we meeting or actively pursuing the tasks? So I think that that's a good idea of a quarterly update and some measurability of where we're at with things. There's some of the things when you read through it that you're like, oh, I know we're working on this and I can count off some projects, but there's some of them that we haven't talked about yet in meetings, and I don't know where we're at with those. I'm sure that we're making progress on them. I just don't know how.
Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy.
I agree with Chris. Comments very, very good. I would recommend that we set periodically where we go and update this. Look, are there changes? I've mentioned this many times before. I think one mistake government makes, we never put a rear view mirror on anything. And I got to looking at this again here when this came up, and I realized the one thing, nowhere in here do we have anything about art. So I think we need to obviously add that. And I also see back here when we talk about investing in our employees and stuff, invested employees, I think we really need to add the council in there. That, how do we invest in our council to encourage them for further training, things of that sort there. So I think we go back to look at this, how it could be upgraded is a great idea. And I think quarterly would certainly take care of that.
Let me throw out another idea. We could create a dashboard similar to what RJ does on the financial side, but create a dashboard for these strategies and tasks, and then just provide your quarterly updates so you can see the progress.
I like that idea, Katie. That would be, it would bring the information to our attention. And if we wanted to discuss it any further, we have the opportunity to do so. But yet it wouldn't necessarily take up a whole lot of time, that meeting during the quarter. So I like that idea.
The other thing that I've seen, thank you, Councilmember Langford. The other thing that I've seen cities do is when they put their budget together for 2021, they will identify how many resources or funding they put towards the different tasks so that you can see, okay, if community engagement is a priority, this is how much dollars were identified in the budget for that activity. And I'm just picking one of many, but sometimes if you connect the budget to your strategy, you can draw the connection.
Councilmember Dunn.
So I just throw an observation that I like that this is actually wall art presented in the council chambers, and that personally, I like to kind of glance at the wall there in reviewing, and as we're having conversation, saying how does what we're taking as an action relate directly to one of what we think these things that we've set out about strategy. And I encourage everybody to be able to do that, not just ordinances and resolutions, but all the actions that we take. I hope that we can all find some way that it makes a reference or somehow relates to what we've drawn here as what we think is important.
Dan, I like that. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just telling Dan, I like that idea. One of the things, and don't take this as criticism because it's not, but on the City of Liberty Lake 2021 Capital Investment Summary, we have an item here, number 2, or it says project number 13. And that's not listed, like Kennedy pointed out, anywhere on our capital facilities plan, but yet it's showing up as a 2021 plan. So I guess I just like more information about how things get put on that don't match the previous information and workshop information that we've worked hard to put together, but yet something new shows up. So if we could learn how that happens, that would be helpful too.
That's next workshop,
Today.
I'm sorry?
That's the next workshop that we're gonna have today.
So following this workshop, Councilor Langford, we're gonna go into the capital facilities workshop, which addresses, I think, the question about how to get this information. And it's the feedback that we get from you in the next workshop.
But I see your point, Councilmember Langford. We want to connect the two and make sure that they're in alignment. It's a good point.
It is.
I think I saw Councilmember Kurt's hand.
One of the things that I saw today was that on the city's Facebook page, there was a request for what people would like to see on the Facebook page. And I think if you're looking at making a dashboard, it would be cool to have those kind of updates. I think the other thing would be really nice to have on our website. So there's the link for the strategic plan, but if the dashboard was up there as well, I think it's just another way that citizens, if they're questioning something or have an interest in something, it's another way for that to be transparent and for them to see where we're at with things too, versus having to dig through agendas or whatnot.
Good feedback. Any other feedback? Thoughts, questions? Councilmember Foyer?
Yeah,
not looking to reinvent the wheel here, but did I hear you say, Lisa, we're going to roll right into more in-depth discussion on capitals plan?
Yes, that's
Today?
exactly right.
Yeah.
Yes. Right
Yeah.
now.
Thank
As soon as
you.
we're done with it, all right.
I feel it's important to revisit the document that's 2 years old to make sure it's up to date. And we do have some council members with some maybe differing ideas. So thank you.
Absolutely. Any other comments before we move on? Okay.
So, just to kick this off, the purpose of this discussion, so this is right now, as we're presenting to you, our working draft of the 2021 through 2026 capital facilities plan. And I'm not gonna go into all the detail, I'm gonna try and give you kind of a high level how we got here. What we're really hoping for today is that we can get some feedback from you, and either today or at a subsequent, meeting, but really focusing particularly on 2021 and 2022, what's happening in those years. And I think that it's important in 2021 in particular because those projects that are listed in 2021 also have to be rolled into RJ's budget. And as a result, we really need to get that feedback from you. So next slide, please. So this is what it looks like in your packet. I'm not going to drill down, and I realize that no one can read this on the screen. Next slide, please. So a couple things. I just want to pause for a second on how to read it. So, and this is the kind of the way we're doing this is somewhat guided by the strategic plan. So we focus on the blue or capital projects and the red or asset management projects. Green are capital projects that are going to be completed by others, and the reason why they're in our capital facilities plan is because these are projects that are eligible for TIF and LIFT. And so we're kind of always keeping track of those as well, because that's some of the funding that we draw from for some of our capital investments as well. In this particular document, one of the things that we did do was we did identify 2020 funds that were being deferred to 2021, and you'll see that in the notes column. And again, they're deferred either because it's a project that is going to not be completed in 2020, that's underway, that the funds will need to be expended in 2021 that were already funded for 2020. So that, and the other are projects that were originally funded in 2020 that ended up being deferred to 2021, either based upon the austerity budget that we entered into as part of the trying to anticipate what was going to happen with our revenues because of the COVID situation, and also projects that may have been deferred because of staff capacity issues. So a couple of things that I wanna point out too. When we put, because RJ uses this in the budget, we identify projects in the capital facilities plan as full expenditures, even when we have grant funding, because nearly all of our grant funding is actually reimbursed. So we have to expend it in order to be reimbursed for it. So you're going to see the fully loaded project costs. So think Harvard and Henry. When you look at a $7 million expenditure in 2021, a significant part of that is state dollars. Same thing with our TIV projects. But we do have a column that really addresses what the different funding streams are for these projects. And that's important not only for you, but for us in looking at what's going to hit general fund versus what's in a dedicated fund. And one of the things that we have to do as we kind of look forward from the 2020 through 2025 CFP to setting up the 2021 through 2026. We do have to look at making sure that we're not overloading any one of the funding streams in any one year. So there's a little bit of a balancing act that needs to happen there. I do want to note that on this sheet, you're going to see one project that's highlighted in yellow as a proposed change from our 2021 through 2026 transportation improvement plan. We did update this to include projects from the tip that you adopted in June of this year, which was an update basically that we went through. But one of the projects that was identified, we're proposing that it be removed. This is the intersection of Mission and Country Vista, because our network analysis showed that the project wasn't warranted. The other thing that I would say is that you're going to get more detailed descriptions in attachment A. And the last thing that I wanted to point out to you is that public art is based on the CFP that was adopted last year, and that the Arts Commission is actually working on their budget for 2021 now, and it's probably going to look something less than that, scaled more to a $25,000 to $35,000 amount, but what we had was what was adopted last year, so that's what we brought forward. Next slide, please.
Lisa,
Sure, I'm sorry.
that's okay, Lisa. I apologize for interrupting you, but I'm having a very hard time understanding what you're saying. Okay, and I think it's the microphone. But if you're speaking into it, that's great. But I'm just really having a hard time hearing you and following you as you start quoting dates.
Okay. All right. So is that better? I can hear it better. So I'm sure it is better for you as well.
Okay.
First of all, I want to point out that this capital facilities plan really is an update to the one that was adopted last year. But it does incorporate changes that were adopted in our transportation improvement plan, which you adopted in June of 2020. As you'll remember, we did update some of the cost estimates. We also updated timing of projects, and we had some road preservation projects that, because of the current condition of roadways, we moved around a little bit, again, based upon current information. Again, so the changes that you made in the transportation improvement plan are actually reflected in here. Those are probably the big changes, with the exception of the project that we're recommending be removed. But I highlighted that because I really wanted you to be aware of that. It also it includes expenditures for projects already underway that will be completed in 2021, which you'll see the notes. Those are the purple cells, partial deferrals. It also includes full funding for 2020 projects that were completely deferred to 2021 due to the austerity and or staffing constraints. So what you'll see in the 2020 is not necessarily what you approved last year, but you'll see the dollar amount changed and purpled out, and there's a note to the effect of how much we're proposing that was already budgeted for 2020 just be deferred to 2021. And again, this was intended to help with aligning this with the budgeting process and looking at where we're at funding wise. Again, it does include full funding for 2020 projects that were completely deferred, but due to those 2020 deferrals into 2021, some of the projects that had originally been programmed for 2021 are now actually being deferred to 2022. So there's a kind of a domino effect in terms of deferring projects to make sure that we have the staffing capacity to actually deliver the projects. And we did still prioritize projects that were grant funded, where grant funding is involved. So Hartford and Henry Road, certainly the TIV projects, some of so you'll see Legacy Ridge on there, that signal, as well as the completion of the signal at Ridgeline High School. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to really spend a lot of time going through details, but you'll see in the overview of the proposed 2020 capital investments, you'll see parks projects listed. To include the public art, as I noted, that's probably going to be reduced by the Arts Commission before you see the budget coming from the mayor. But we do have the Public Works Yard. Most of the work, which was frontage improvements and paving, is being deferred until 2020. So the building that we were going to begin in 2021 is now being deferred to 2022, so the whole project pushes out a little bit. The other are all asset management. The only thing that I would note, Pavilion Park improvements, you approved the contract for the irrigation system improvements, but that's not going to get, the construction's not going to begin until October, and we actually will be wrapping up the project in the spring when we turn the sprinkler system back on. And so, so that's one where we're deferring a portion of the funding that was originally targeted for 2020. The rest of the other one is with respect to the library and the police station. We are deferring $147,700 for the generator into 2020. The rest of the dollars in the asset management are dollars that were set aside, identified through the asset management facility, and are looking at the annualized projects that we had identified.
Just to clarify, that deferment was for 2021.
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Next slide, please. Again, transportation is, don't have a heart attack with the numbers. But the big numbers here are Harvard Road and Henry Road, which are kind of ruled together because it's hard to parse those out, what is ours versus what is theirs, and where we're at with the revenues. So we've kept them lumped together for purposes of the capital investment. The other projects were again the Country Vista and Legacy Ridge intersection improvement. We are going to be bringing back to you this year the design task order, but we are looking at funding for next year. We have applied for a TIB grant for that one, but we won't know until November on that. The other one is the signal at the high school. But because we want to see those improvements in before the high school opens, we have those both slated for next year, and we're moving quickly, as I said, on the design for Country Vista and Legacy Ridge. The smart signal control, we've deferred the actual acquisition for that. We've done some work in terms of the architecture, but we're going to defer that until 2020 just because of staff capacity issues. The Stormwater Master Plan is a new one, and we're going after a grant to fund 70% of that. This one is in here in part because we have aging stormwater infrastructure. We do have a dedicated funding stream, the Aquifer Protection Fund and the Stormwater Utility Fund. What this is intended to do is to develop the capital improvement plan for those facilities so that we are keeping them as they age, that we're taking care of that asset. And again, this would be funded by the Aquifer Protection and Utility Funds, but principally the CNAP grant. And we would only do this project if we were successful in getting this grant. And then the last is the street maintenance application. Next slide, please. Trails and pedestrian way, we do have funding in there for, we're completing the design. We do have a cost estimate for the Mission Bitterroot crossing. That's the funding that was identified. And basically, as you look through the years, we've taken the policy that you adopted last December and put it into, actually then developed prioritization matrix that is based upon your policy. And so we have plugged in the cost estimates for those projects. based upon, that prioritization. However, we do recognize, and you'll see the note in the plan, that this could change, based upon the pedestrian master plan, which is, or the sidewalk master plan, which has been deferred from 2020 into 2021, again, based on staffing capacities. So, next slide, please. And lastly, equipment. So fleet equipment, we have, 303,500, which includes, some, 5-year, or some 3-year leases for, some heavy equipment and, as well as the computer equipment. This includes the 5-year replacement of all of our laptops, desktops, et cetera. So that's on that replacement schedule. Plus, we've added this year, firewalls and servers to get them on the regular asset management schedule as well. And so, next slide, please. So this is the overall summary of the proposed capital facilities plan as it is in its current form. Again, obviously, a big chunk of the spending is with the Harvard Road bridge widening and ramp and the Henry Road overpass. And this is the breakdown of the capital investments. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I wanted to, and I think this is an important part of the story, is recognizing staffing capacity. So I want to talk about first the projects that will be completed or have been completed in 2020. And you're going to see on the list, you're going to see a number of 2018 and a number of 2019 projects that we are closing out. It does take, so that it does take time to close them out. You'll also see the Trailhead Master Plan is being completed, council chamber recording hardware, the network analysis update and corridor study, which again is on the agenda for tonight, and Liberty Lake Road overlay. Next slide, please. The projects that are going to continue into 2021 include public works yard development, public art, a number of asset management, including the irrigation system at Pavilion Park, Orchard Park improvements, which are improvements that were funded for 2020 that were deferred to 2021 due to COVID, so kind of some punch list of items. The library building and police station improvements, we talked about that being deferred. Again, Harvard Road bridge widening and I-90 ramp and Henry Road overpass. These are heavy lifts for staff. It does take a lot of staff management. Harvard Bridge will not be quite as much because the construction is being managed by WashDOT, but the design for Henry Road, there's a lot of staff engagement in that. Again, the two signals that we talked about, the smart signal control and the pedestrian crossing at Bitterroot. So these are all 2020 projects that are still active, that staff is still, and that's an important part of the story. So when we look to 2020, funding for 2021, next slide, please. The new projects, we have a solar-powered school zone speed limit sign for near the high school. We have the stormwater master plan. We have sidewalk improvements. This is a project that we deferred. This is that gap on the north side of Mission Avenue between Aladdin and Caulfield. That was a 2020 project that again was deferred due to staff capacity this year, but it's important because it is a safe route to school. Also, the sidewalk master plan. So these are the new projects that we have listed for this year. Next slide, please. So with that, I just wanted to give you enough of an overview as to how we got here. And again, we're continuing on the course that we've established for the most part, with a few minor changes that are being proposed that were very intentional and well thought out, I think. But With that, we kind of stand for questions and comments, and really this is your opportunity to give us feedback, and we can certainly schedule another one of these if you need more time to digest this. Obviously, this is the working draft, and but it will be coming back as part of the budget with the mayor's budget. So we really do need feedback sooner rather than later, at least on the 2021 project.
There was something I was gonna add too, to let the council know. When you add up all of the dollars for 2022, and this includes equipment and projects and asset management, it's over $11 million. That's the largest capital facility, budget that I've seen since I've been here. So it is a very, very busy year that we're facing going forward. And obviously, the major dollars will be dedicated to Harvard and Henry, but it's still a very, very busy year. So really what we want from the council is your feedback. Do we have it right? I guess that's the question, is are these the right projects? Are these the right years to move forward with these projects? Because we kind of did as Lisa said, it's a combination of shuffling what we didn't do this year into next year, keeping next year those projects that have outside funding sources and the like, and then moving some things, not a lot, some things to 2022, just because of cash flow and staff resources.
Councilmember Kurtz?
I want to be sensitive to the comments also about staff resources and time. But I think one of the reasons we wanted to have this discussion, and I think it's important now as we're getting into the budgeting process, is we wanted to talk about Trailhead. We also have had the conversation back and forth about City Hall and investments. And I think that was one of the pieces that needs to come together is are those things in our priorities? Are they, and if so, we need to be budgeting for those. And so I'm wondering what everybody else thinks. I mean, should we be moving forward on those things?
Councilmember Langford?
Yes, just some observations. Every time the council takes action and tells staff that something is a priority, we have never really referred back to our original capital facilities plan that we have and say, how does this fit in to what we've already dictated is a priority? And if it doesn't fit in, do we push something off the list to put this new item on the list? Secondly, I'm not harping on public art other than it was put on a capital facilities plan. And I don't know how, so I'm going to ask RJ, how and why would a fund be given a capital fund as well when it's already being funded from the general budget, general revenues?
I want to say that it's on the capital facilities plan as identified as a project, so that if there's, and one idea is that it's funded by the general fund, but we set up a special fund that we can dissolve it and put it back in the general fund. That's fine, but it was wanted to be purposely set aside, but the seed money primarily comes from general fund or from donations. The art that's identified on the capital facilities plan, we're identifying it. Council is saying, yeah, these are items that are on the capital facilities plan. If there by chance is some kind of a grant or some kind of funding, it's already identified in capital facilities plan for that type of funding. But the money would go all into the fund that was established specifically for public art.
Okay.
Councilmember Severs, I saw your hand up next.
Yeah, first, Lisa, thanks for kind of leading the charge on this. There's a lot of extra work you put in. This is fantastic. I'm going to kind of add to what Annie was starting with, and I think what Phil was already mentioning, that I think that this just sparks that we need to restart the project prioritization conversation and just start looking through this and picking apart what we actually think is important to have on here, and or maybe what's gone by the wayside. I just see several capital projects that are listed on here that have been brought up a year ago, 2 years ago. And I'm looking at things like kiosks or public art, and I'm not picking on any one thing. Dog park, you know, are these still priorities? Do we want them on our capital facilities plan? I understand sometimes we put it on here as a holding place. It's on here so we can use grant or TIF lift dollars or whatever to fund things, but I think we should go back through a prioritization discussion or start that project to use for both this and for our strategic plan at the same time. So hopefully we could get that started pretty soon.
Councilmember Dunn?
So question on that, Hugh, in that regard, when we look at what we've got as the 2022 timeframe, do you think there's exceptions to what staff surfaced here, or would you put what you think of as this prioritization out further into that 2022 and beyond discussion?
I would put it out even further and then start pulling pieces off of this to feed our strategic plan. It would be my hope that parts of the CFP feed the strategic plan, and then we can start putting KPIs out there, key performance indicators out there to say whether or not we're actually on task. So kind of feeding back into Katie's dashboard, are we on task for, I'll use the dog park. If we all decide that the dog park is a priority, great. Are we on task for getting a dog park by 2022, or are we not on task for getting it? Just to pick one thing as an example, so we can start picking out steps to get there. So I would hope that our capital facilities plan would help feed our strategic plan, and they should be pretty aligned. So strategic plan might be a little bit more short term, is the way I would look at it, but maybe not. What do you think, Dan, or other council members?
I think you're reflecting what my observation is, and that when I look at what we've got as placed and poised for consideration in the 2021 budget, I believe it's reflecting that period of time and the priorities that we've got in that window horizon. But that I'm down with you that beyond that, I'm going to say, especially with respect to the Trailhead project potential, as well as the City Hall and other investment, I think that that needs to be introduced and considered in the context of that greater, many later years vision.
I agree.
Councilmember Langford?
I like what I'm hearing. One of the things that I notice when we look at the capital facilities or the capital investment summary that was made out, which thank you very much, I appreciate it. We have all this money listed, we getting down to, like Katie pointed out, $11 million. But we haven't heard, and I'm not putting anybody on the spot, RJ, but we haven't heard anybody saying we have that kind of money. Okay, so now's the time when we should be discussing public works yard development. Do we have the money for that? And if we choose number, let me see, if we go down to the pavilion improvements and the Rocky Hill improvements and the Orchard Park improvements, if we fund those, do we still have money for the yard? So we need to be able to hear the financial side of this as we think about a capital facilities plan. There's no use putting things on here that we know if we make one decision during the year that's not on this plan, we've just ruined funding for something we thought was important. So I don't know exactly how we accomplish that other than when we have our facilities discussion. We actually have somebody there that can say, yeah, we can fund it, but you can't stray too far from what we've already listed, because then we're going to spoil that funding, which makes it important for the upcoming year, when we talk about new things, to remember that we may be saying no to something we previously said yes to, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And I absolutely love the dialogue we're having, amazing conversations, great input from all of you. I definitely want to continue this conversation. Our normal city council meeting starts in about a minute and a half. So I don't want to cut this off, so I'd recommend that we continue this at the next workshop. If it's your choosing, that we continue it for October 6th discussion.
Quick question. At our next workshop discussing regarding this topic, are we going to get further in the weeds then, line by line?
If that's what you'd like.
I would recommend if there's specific projects that are listed here, especially stuff that we're proposing to be funded in 2021, or something that you want to bring forward, we do want to discuss those individually, because they do affect what the mayor, the budget coming on October 20th would be.
Yeah.
That to Councilmember Langford's comments too, a lot of the items on there that we're listing in 2021, we can fund those, but if there's a project that we want to bring ahead, that does have an impact on everything else, so then we have to figure what to slide out. So the things that we presented tonight, yes, there's money aside for assigned